The text came through while Frank Crowley was sitting with his buddies at the VFW hall. Ed Sullivan, halfway through a story about Pusan. Frank's phone buzzed against the scratched Formica table. He glanced down, expecting nothing. Linda maybe, or one of those spam calls about his truck's extended warranty. "You'll die poor, you stupid old fool. Once he's gone, we'll have the house and the land. Just be patient, baby." Sender, Diane, wife. The coffee in Frank's mouth turned to ash. Around him, the other veterans laughed at Ed's punchline, their voices suddenly distant like he was underwater. Frank read it again, then a third time. The smell of burnt coffee and pine sol couldn't cover the taste of bile rising in his throat. Wrong recipient. Meant for someone else. Someone she called baby. Frank's hands shook as he set the phone face down. Ed was asking him something, but Frank couldn't hear over the blood rushing in his ears. That message was just the beginning of the longest week of Frank's life. The morning had started like any other. Frank stood in his workshop, hand plane sliding over pine, the smell of fresh sawdust mixing with the coffee from his thermos. Merle Haggard played low on the radio, Mama Tried, and the December cold seeped through the walls despite the space heater humming in the corner. He was making a jewelry box for Diane. Christmas gift, 42 years of marriage, and he still tried. The wood was smooth under his calloused fingers, the grain running true. He'd been working on this box for 3 weeks now, sanding between the joints until they fit perfect. Diane probably wouldn't notice the dovetails or the felt lining he'd ordered special from the craft store. But that was all right. Frank had learned a long time ago that peace came from not expecting much. His phone buzzed just after noon when he was sitting at the VFW hall with the Tuesday lunch crowd. Ed Sullivan was telling a story about Korea, something about a supply sergeant and a case of whiskey that went missing, and the other guys were laughing, slapping the table. Frank reached for his coffee, and that's when he saw it. The text message. He stared at the screen, his brain refusing to process the words at first. Then they came into focus, sharp and cruel. "You'll die poor, you stupid old fool. Once he's gone, we'll have the house and the land. Just be patient, baby." From Diane, his wife of 42 years, meant for someone else. Frank's coffee sloshed over the rim of his cup, burning his hand. He didn't feel it. Ed's voice faded to background noise. Chairs scraping, someone coughing, the clink of silverware on plates. Frank read the message again, looking for some other meaning, some way it could be a joke or a mistake. "You all right there, Frank?" Ed was looking at him, concern creasing his weathered face. "Yeah." Frank's voice came out rough. He cleared his throat. "Just tired. Think I'm gonna head home." "You sure? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine. Just need some air. You saw." He pushed back from the table, grabbed his coat, and walked out into the gray December afternoon. His hands were shaking so bad he had trouble getting the key in the truck's ignition. The drive home was a blur. Frank took the long way without thinking, past the Lutheran church where they'd gotten married in 1981, past the diner where they'd had their first date. Every landmark felt like it was mocking him now. How long? That's what his mind kept circling back to. How long had she been planning this? And who the hell was Baby? His truck crunched into the gravel driveway at 12:47. He knew because he checked his watch, like the exact time mattered, like he could mark this moment as before and after. Diane was in the kitchen when he walked in, actually humming some tune he didn't recognize, arranging flowers in a vase on the counter, white chrysanthemums from the grocery store. She was wearing the blue cardigan he'd bought her last Christmas, her wedding ring catching the light from the window over the sink. "Hi, honey. You're home early." She didn't even look up from the flowers, just kept adjusting them, tilting her head like she was considering art. Frank stood in the doorway, his coat still on, keys in his hand. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. What was he supposed to say? "I saw your text. Who is he? Are you really planning to—" "Frank, you okay?" Now she looked at him, and her face was so normal, so familiar, that for a second he wondered if he'd imagined the whole thing. "Yeah, not feeling great. Might be coming down with something." "Oh." She turned back to the flowers. "Well, don't give it to me. I've got that church committee meeting on Thursday." That night, Diane made pot roast. She set the table with the good plates, lit a candle, chatted about the neighbor's new dog, and how Pastor Jim's sermon last Sunday had gone on too long. Frank pushed the food around his plate, managed a few bites that tasted like sawdust. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked like a countdown. The furnace kicked on with its familiar rattle. Diane didn't seem to notice his silence. Or maybe she did, and just didn't care. When had that started? When had they become two strangers sharing a house? "I'm not very hungry," Frank said finally. "Think I'll work in the shop for a bit." "Suit yourself." She didn't look up from cutting her meat. The workshop was cold and dark. Frank sat on his stool, didn't turn on the lights or the heater, just sat there in the smell of sawdust and motor oil, staring at the jewelry box on his workbench. Hours of careful work. For what? He pulled out his phone, read the message again in the blue glow of the screen. Once he's gone, we'll have the house and the land. Once he's gone, not if, when. His generation didn't talk about feelings, didn't make scenes. You put your head down, you worked, you endured. That's what men did. But sitting there in the dark, Frank had to ask himself, was that strength or was it just cowardice dressed up in flannel? The house was quiet when he finally went inside around midnight. He climbed the stairs slow, each step creaking under his weight. Diane was already asleep or pretending to be, her back to his side of the bed. Frank lay there in the darkness, listening to her breathe. 42 years, and he felt like he was sleeping next to a stranger. Had she always been this person, or had she changed so gradually he hadn't noticed? His phone was on the nightstand. At 2:14 a.m., it lit up with an incoming call. The name on the screen, Derek. Frank stared at it, his heart hammering against his ribs. The phone buzzed once, twice, 3 times, then went silent. A minute later, a text notification appeared from Derek. "You up?" Frank's mouth went dry. He heard movement, the bathroom door closing softly down the hall, then Diane's voice, barely a whisper, urgent and low. He eased out of bed, his joints creaking, and crept into the hallway. Light showed under the bathroom door. Frank pressed his ear against the wood, hardly breathing. "No, he's asleep," Diane was saying. "Derek, I told you not to call this late." Silence while Derek talked. "I know, baby. I know. Just be patient." More silence. "Soon, I promise. We just have to be smart about it." Frank's legs nearly gave out. He backed away from the door, stumbled back to bed, pulled the covers up to his chin. A few minutes later, the bathroom door opened. Diane slipped back into bed beside him. Frank didn't sleep, just lay there until dawn, watching the ceiling turn from black to gray, one thought circling his mind like a vulture. She wasn't just cheating. She was planning something worse. Morning came too soon. Frank sat at the kitchen table, staring at eggs he couldn't eat. Diane moved around the kitchen with her usual efficiency, coffee pot gurgling, toast popping up, the scrape of butter on bread. She was humming again, that same tune from yesterday. "You look terrible," she said, not unkindly. "Maybe you should stay home today." "I'm fine." "Suit yourself." Frank forced down a few bites, tasting nothing. His phone sat on the table between them, face down. That missed call from Derek, 2:14 a.m., sat in his call log like evidence. But evidence of what, exactly? His wife talking to another man? That wasn't a crime. Not yet. The black sedan pulled up at 10:23. Frank was in his workshop pretending to sand the jewelry box when he heard Diane call from the house. "Frank, someone's here." Pentagon insignia on the door. Frank's stomach dropped. His first thought was irrational. They know about Diane somehow, they're here to help. But that was stupid. The military didn't show up at your door about domestic problems. The man who stepped out was young, maybe 31, 32, in dress uniform. Ramrod straight with the kind of bearing that said West Point or Annapolis. "Mr. Franklin Crowley?" "That's me." "Captain Marcus Hayes, sir. Pentagon Liaison Office. May I speak with you privately?" Diane was at the window. Frank could see her silhouette, watching, always watching. They sat in the living room, Hayes in the armchair that used to be Frank's father's, Frank on the couch. The captain had a leather folder, official-looking papers inside. "Mr. Crowley, I'm here regarding the estate of Colonel Raymond Crowley." Raymond. Frank searched his memory. His father's brother. Vague image of a tall man at a Thanksgiving dinner. Must have been 67 or 68. Didn't talk much. Left early. "I barely knew him," Frank said. "Yes, sir, he was aware of that. But you're his closest living relative." Hayes pulled out a document. "Colonel Crowley passed away 3 months ago. He left his entire estate to you." "How much we talking?" Hayes met his eyes. $156 million. The room tilted. Frank gripped the arm of the couch. What? "Defense contracts, land holdings, investments. Your uncle was a very successful man, Mr. Crowley, and he specified in his will To my nephew Franklin, who served honorably. Frank heard a sharp intake of breath, turned. Diane was in the doorway, one hand on the frame like she needed the support. 156 million? Her voice was barely a whisper. Hayes stood. Ma'am, this is a private matter. But Diane was already moving into the room, her face transforming like watching clouds shift. The coldness Frank had grown used to melted away, replaced by something that might have been warmth if he didn't know better. Frank, honey, that's wonderful. Your uncle must have really loved you. Hayes was watching her now, and Frank saw something flicker in the captain's expression. Suspicion, concern. It was gone in a second, replaced by professional neutrality. I'll need you to sign some documents, Mr. Crowley, and I'll be back in a few days to finalize everything. He handed Frank a business card. If you have any questions, call me directly. Anytime. The way he said it, anytime, made Frank think Hayes had seen something he didn't like. After the sedan pulled away, Diane was all over him, touching his arm, something she hadn't done in months, maybe years. We should celebrate, she said. I'll make your favorite, that pot roast you like. We can open a bottle of wine. Diane, I know I've been distant, Frank. Her eyes were wet now, actual tears forming. I want to change that. We've got time now. We can finally enjoy life. She squeezed his hand, and Frank felt sick. That night, she made the pot roast, set candles on the table, wore makeup, talked about traveling, places they could go, things they could see. Frank watched her perform, this woman wearing his wife's face, saying all the right words. I love you, she said as they were cleaning up. I know I don't say it enough. Frank's hands were in the dishwater, soap suds up to his elbows. He didn't turn around. When did you stop? The question came out before he could stop it. What? When did you stop loving me? If you ever did. Silence. Then, Frank, what are you talking about? I just said, forget it, I'm tired. He went to bed early, lay there in the dark. Diane came up an hour later, slid in beside him, reached over and put her hand on his chest. We're going to be okay, she whispered. Everything's going to be okay now. Frank didn't answer, couldn't, because he'd just figured it out, lying there in the dark with her hand over his heart. Yesterday's text, you'll die poor. Now he wouldn't die poor, which meant one of two things. Either she'd stay with him for the money, making both their lives miserable for however many years he had left, or she'd found an even better reason to make sure he didn't have many years left at all. At 2:14 a.m., same time as last night, Frank heard the bathroom door close. Then Diane's voice, urgent and low, filtering through the wall. Derek, baby, listen, it's real. 156 million. I saw the documents. Frank's blood turned to ice. We just need to wait a few more months. Heart attack, maybe. He's old. He has pills. Frank didn't move from the bed, just lay there, rigid, while Diane whispered murder into her phone. Yes, I'm serious. Pentagon came yesterday. It's his uncle's estate. Pause. Derek saying something Frank couldn't make out. Heart attack is cleanest. He's got medication, beta blockers, blood thinners. Nobody would question it. Man his age, stress of sudden wealth. Frank's hand found the bedpost, gripped it hard enough his knuckles cracked. I know, baby, I know. Diane actually giggled, soft and young-sounding, a sound Frank hadn't heard in a decade. Then it's you and me, somewhere warm, Florida, maybe, or Arizona. Another pause. He won't know what hit him, literally. The casual cruelty of it, discussing his death like they were planning a vacation, made Frank's stomach heave. He pressed his fist against his mouth, breathing hard through his nose. The bathroom door opened, light spilled into the hallway, then went dark. Diane padded back to bed, slipped under the covers beside him. She even touched his shoulder. Frank, you awake? He didn't answer, couldn't trust his voice. She settled in, and within minutes her breathing went slow and even, asleep, just like that. While Frank stared at the ceiling until dawn, his heart hammering like a prisoner against his ribs. Morning came gray and mean. The radio was calling for a blizzard. 2 feet of snow, maybe more, winds up to 40 miles an hour, travel not recommended. Good thing we stocked up, Diane said, pouring coffee. Might be stuck inside for a few days. Stuck inside. With her. Frank's hands shook as he reached for his mug. He studied it before drinking. Was there something in it? Was he being paranoid? Or was paranoia the only thing keeping him alive? He took a small sip. Tasted normal, but what did poison taste like? You're quiet this morning, Diane said. Thinking about the inheritance. Lot to process. We should talk to a financial advisor. Make sure it's invested properly. She was using her planning voice, the one that came out when she was organizing church fundraisers. Efficient. Practical. And we need to update our wills. Make sure everything's in order. In order, right. Make sure she got everything when his heart gave out. The snow started just after lunch. Big flakes at first, then smaller, meaner ones driven sideways by the wind. By 2 o'clock, visibility was 0. The road disappeared under white. That's when Derek showed up. Frank saw the truck through the workshop window, a big Ford F-250, black, lifted. It pulled up next to Frank's old 98, making his look like a toy. "Frank," Diane called from the house. "Derek's here to check on us." Derek Stallworth. So now Frank had a last name for the voice on the phone. The man who walked through the door was 34, maybe 35, built like he lived at the gym. Too tight Under Armour shirt showing off his arms, jeans that probably cost more than Frank's truck payment. Cocky smile that said he'd never lost a fight in his life. "Hey, Pops," Derek stuck out his hand. "Thought I'd make sure you folks were okay in the storm." "Pops." Frank shook the hand, firm grip, probably meant to intimidate, and said nothing. "So thoughtful," Diane gushed. Come in, I'll make coffee." Derek made himself at home. Boots up on Frank's kitchen chair, sprawling like he owned the place. Diane served him coffee, touched his shoulder as she set the cup down. Quick, familiar, the kind of touch that said they'd done this before. "So, Pops," Derek grinned at Frank across the table. "Heard about your big windfall. Must feel good, huh?" "News travels." "Small town, man. Everyone's talking about old Frank Crowley hitting the jackpot." He sipped the coffee, loud. "What are you going to do with all that cash?" "Haven't decided." "You thought about estate planning? What happens if, something happens to you?" Derek's eyes flicked to Diane, back to Frank. "Diane here would be set for life, right?" "Derek, that's morbid," Diane said, but she was smiling. "Just being practical. Man your age, Pops, gotta think about these things." Frank's jaw was so tight his teeth ached. This kid, this boy, sitting in his kitchen, drinking his coffee, sleeping with his wife, talking about his death like it was inevitable, like it was already decided. "I'm thinking," Frank said quietly. Derek laughed. "I bet you are." The blizzard got worse. Wind screamed around the corners of the house, snow piling against the windows. The power flickered but held. "Might have to stay over if the roads don't clear," Derek said, helping himself to more coffee. "That okay, Pops?" "We've got the couch," Diane said quickly. Too quickly. Frank stood. "I'll be in my workshop." "Don't freeze out there," Derek called after him. The workshop was freezing, but Frank didn't care. He sat in the dark, listening to their laughter through the walls. The TV came on. Some show he couldn't make out. Normal sounds, comfortable sounds, like they were already the couple, and he was the intruder. His phone felt heavy in his pocket. Who would he call? Sheriff Bradley? Say what? My wife's cheating, and I think she wants to kill me? That sounded crazy even in his own head. Hours passed. The house went quiet around midnight. Frank crept to the window, looked across at Margaret Henderson's place. Her kitchen light was on, always was, another insomniac, another soul awake in the darkness. He almost walked over there, almost knocked on her door and said, "Help me, I'm drowning." But what could she do? Frank went back to bed around 4 a.m. Derek was asleep on the couch, or supposed to be. Diane was in their bed, on her side, facing away. Frank lay down, closed his eyes, and heard the stairs creak. Soft footsteps, then nothing. He waited 10 minutes before he got up, quiet as he could, and looked down the hallway. Derek's door was cracked open, the one leading to the guest room, not the couch. And it was empty. Day 2 of the blizzard, and Derek was still there. "Roads are terrible," he announced over breakfast, like it was his house, his decision. "Plow hasn't even come through. Guess I'm stuck here another day, folks." He was wearing one of Frank's flannel shirts. Didn't ask, just went into the closet and took it. Frank stared at him across the table. Derek stared back, smirking. "This shirt okay, Pops? Yours was just sitting there." "Fine," Frank said. Diane set down scrambled eggs, toast, more coffee, playing hostess. "We don't mind, Derek. It's nice having company." Company, that's what they were calling it. The day crawled by like something wounded. Derek rearranged the living room furniture. Better flow, he said, moving Frank's reading chair to the corner, took over the TV remote, flipped to some reality show about house flipping, talked to Diane like Frank wasn't even there. This place has potential, just needs updating. New kitchen, maybe knock out that wall. Our kitchen, Frank thought. Our wall. But he didn't say anything, just retreated to the workshop where the cold bit through his coat and his breath came out in clouds. He sat on his stool, staring at the jewelry box. 3 weeks of work. For what? The .45 was in the bedroom, in the nightstand drawer. His father's gun, brought back from Korea. Frank thought about it now, sitting in the cold workshop. Thought about how easy it would be. Load it, one shot, problem solved. Whose problem, though? Diane's or his? He wasn't sure anymore. That night, Derek stayed for dinner again. Pot roast, leftovers from the celebration meal. Diane served it like they were a family, the three of them passing the salt and butter. Derek's foot found Diane's under the table. Frank saw it, saw her look away, smiling. I'm not hungry, Frank said. Pushed back from the table. You barely ate yesterday either, Diane said. You feeling okay? I'm fine. In the bedroom, Frank opened the nightstand drawer. The .45 sat there, wrapped in an oilcloth. Next to it, his pill bottles, beta blockers, blood thinners, the aspirin his doctor said to take daily. Frank counted the pills. 30 beta blockers yesterday. He was sure of it. Now there were 28. His hands went cold. Morning 3. Frank woke early, sat at the kitchen table before Diane came down, waited. When she finally appeared, she was too cheerful, too bright. Morning, honey. Made your coffee just how you like it. She set a mug in front of him. His usual mug, the one with the VFW logo half faded. Steam rising, smell of coffee, and something else? Or was he imagining it? Derek appeared in the doorway, t-shirt and sweatpants. Morning, Pops. Gonna drink that coffee? Both of them watching him. Frank picked up the mug, held it to his lips, didn't swallow. His phone rang, convenient, almost too convenient, but he'd take it. Hold on, he said. Stood up, walked toward the workshop. Hello? Dead air. Nobody there. Nobody. Frank poured the coffee down the workshop sink, watched it spiral away, came back with the empty mug. Needed that, he said. Diane smiled. Good. You want more? I'm fine. An hour later, alone in the workshop, Frank's heart started racing, pounding so hard he thought it might burst. Was it the coffee? Had he swallowed some without meaning to, or was it just panic? He sat down hard, head between his knees, breathing through his mouth. Took 10 minutes for his heart to slow down. When he went back inside to use the bathroom, he counted his pills again. Beta blockers, 28. He'd miscounted. Had to have. Unless she'd already tried once and failed. Day 4. The plow finally came through, scraping down the main road. Enough that Derek could leave if he wanted. He didn't want. Might as well stay till it's fully clear, as he said, sprawled on Frank's couch. Don't want to risk it. Risk what? Frank thought. The only risk here was him. He started sleeping in the workshop. Told Diane he was working on a project, needed to be out there. She didn't argue. Probably preferred him separate. Easier to... Frank stopped that thought. But it kept coming back. He hadn't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch in 4 days. His hands shook all the time now. Bad enough that he couldn't hold his coffee mug steady. Spilled it twice. Started using 2 hands like an old man, like he was already dying. Maybe he was. That afternoon, Frank found a note slipped under the workshop door, typed, printed on plain paper. Old men have accidents in bad weather. Stop asking questions. Asking questions? He hadn't asked anything, hadn't confronted anyone, unless they thought he knew more than he did, unless his silence was making them nervous. Good. Frank sat on the cold concrete floor, back against the wall, note in his hand. 3 options, clear as day. Die, kill them, or fight. First option, coward's way. And he'd come too close to it already, staring at that .45, thinking about how easy it would be. Second, not who he was. 42 years married, and he'd never raised a hand to her. Wouldn't start now, no matter what. Third, fight legal. But he'd need help, evidence, witnesses, things he didn't have sitting alone in his workshop, freezing to death, too scared to drink his own coffee. Frank pulled out his phone, stared at the screen. Margaret's number was in there. She'd given it to him last year when his roof was leaking, said call if he needed help. He typed, "Are you awake?" Deleted it. What was he going to say? Help, I'm scared? Men his age didn't say that, didn't ask for help. Put your head down, endure, that's what you did. Except enduring was killing him. Frank tried to stand, his legs wouldn't work right. Tried to lift his coffee thermos, dropped it, watched coffee spread across the floor, tried to hold his phone steady enough to dial. Couldn't. His body was giving up before his mind did. Maybe they're right, he said out loud to the empty workshop. Maybe I'm just done. The jewelry box sat on the workbench, mocking him. All those careful hours, all that patience, for nothing. Frank put his head in his hands. That's when he heard it, soft but firm, knocking on the workshop door. Frank? Margaret Henderson's voice. You in there? He didn't answer. Couldn't. I know you're up. I can see your shadow. More knocking. I got coffee, real coffee, and casserole. Come on over. It's time we talked. Frank's throat closed up. Tears he'd been holding for days threatened to spill over. Frank Crowley. Her voice was steel and kindness mixed. I know what's happening in your house. I know because it happened in mine. Frank stood on shaking legs, opened the door. Margaret stood there in her heavy coat, casserole dish in her hands, determination on her face. Behind her, across the snow, Diane's silhouette appeared in the house window, watching, always watching. Come on, Margaret said. Before you freeze to death out here, we got planning to do. Margaret's kitchen smelled like cinnamon and safety. The old wallpaper, yellow daisies from the 70s, should have been ugly but wasn't. It was just Margaret, real, warm. A fat orange cat slept on the windowsill, and the coffee she poured came in actual china cups with saucers. Sit, she said, not a request. Frank sat. The chair was solid underneath him, the table scarred from years of use. Through the window, he could see his own house across the yard, dark except for the kitchen light. Margaret set the coffee in front of him, then sat across the table, her steel blue eyes studying his face. You look half dead, Frank. Feel it. How long you known? The question was so direct it caught him off guard. About the affair? About all of it. The affair, the money, the planning. Frank's hands wrapped around the coffee cup, needing the warmth. 4 days. Text message came to her phone by mistake. Then the Pentagon showed up about my uncle's estate. Then... His voice cracked. Then I heard her on the phone, talking about heart attacks and pills. Margaret nodded, like this confirmed something she'd already suspected. 20 years ago, she said quietly, my Henry had an affair. Bank teller. Younger woman, like they always are. Frank looked up. Margaret Henderson, who brought casseroles every Sunday and knew everyone's business but never gossiped mean. Margaret, who seemed solid as bedrock. I found out same way you did, she continued. Wrong text, right phone. Those were the early days of texting. People weren't careful yet. She took a sip of coffee. I chose to stay. We worked through it. He died 5 years later. Heart attack. Real one. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm not telling you for sympathy. I'm telling you so, you know. I regret the forgiveness. No, I regret that I never found my voice again after. Her eyes were wet now. That coldness between us, Frank. We never healed that. I stayed quiet, thinking it was strength. It wasn't. It was just fear, dressed up as forgiveness. Frank felt something crack open in his chest. I don't know what to do. You tell me everything, right now. All of it. So he did. The text, the inheritance, Derek, the 2 a.m. phone calls, the missing pills, the coffee this morning he couldn't bring himself to drink, the note about old men and accidents. Words tumbled out of him, barely coherent, but Margaret just listened, nodding, not shocked. I knew, she said when he finished. I've been watching. Watching. That Derek boy's been coming around since last summer. Started as contractor for your kitchen renovation. Took 3 months for a 2-week job. I seen him leaving early mornings. She stood, pulled a notebook from a drawer. Actual notebook, written in careful handwriting. 47 times his truck's been at your house since July. 12 overnight stays. Diane and him at Pine Ridge Motel. I know because Nora from church saw them. Told me. Frank stared at the notebook. You been keeping track? Someone had to. Margaret sat back down. Then the inheritance news. And I knew you were in danger. Greed turns people into strangers, Frank. And your Diane, she's been a stranger for a while now. I can't afford a lawyer. Money's not here yet, and even when it comes... Margaret pulled a business card from her pocket. Janet Morrison, family law. Handled my estate when Henry died. Handled my nephew's nonsense, too. Your nephew? Wanted me in assisted living so he could sell my house. Said I was too old, not safe alone. Margaret's mouth set in a hard line. I'm 72 and sharp as ever. He just wanted my equity. Janet helped me shut that down legal. She slid the card across the table. First consultation's free. After that, we'll figure it. Besides, Frank, you think you're broke? You're about to be rich. She'll take payment later. I don't know if I can. Yes, you can. And you will, because the alternative is dying in your sleep. Margaret's voice was fierce now. You're not doing this alone. I won't let you. Frank's throat was too tight to speak. Margaret stood, went to her phone on the wall, old rotary style, cream-colored. She dialed, held it out to him. Talk to Janet, right now. The lawyer's voice was professional, no nonsense. Frank explained, halting, embarrassed, what was happening. Janet listened without interrupting. Mr. Crowley, this is attempted fraud and possibly conspiracy to commit murder. How fast can you get to my office? Roads are mostly clear now. Tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. Bring any evidence you have, texts, photos, anything. After he hung up, Margaret poured him more coffee. You need more than a lawyer, though. You need witnesses. To what? It's my word against hers. Not just yours. Ed Sullivan runs Hannigan's bar. Derek drinks there. Margaret's smile was sharp. Bragging type, that boy. Loud mouth when he's had a few beers. Ed told me Derek talks about his sugar mama and the big payday coming. Ed knows? Everyone knows, Frank. We just been waiting for you to know. She reached across the table, patted his hand. Her palm was papery, warm. Small town, we protect our own, and you're one of ours. Frank felt something he hadn't felt in days. Not quite hope, too fragile for that, but maybe the possibility of hope. That Pentagon captain, Margaret said. Hayes, he gave you his card? Frank pulled it from his wallet. Captain Marcus Hayes, direct line. Military man. He'll have resources. Call him too. If there's fraud with military inheritance, that's federal. You think she already... I think she's been planning this longer than you know. And that captain, he saw something when he met her. I could tell. They sat in comfortable silence for a minute. Just the tick of Margaret's kitchen clock and the cat purring on the sill. You're sleeping here tonight, Margaret said finally. Guest room upstairs. Tomorrow before dawn, you go back. They won't know you left. Margaret, I can't. Yes, you can. Tonight, you rest. Really rest. Tomorrow, you fight. Frank slept 10 hours straight in Margaret's guest room, dreamless and deep. When he woke, dawn was just breaking. Margaret had coffee ready, handed him a thermos for the walk back. Remember, she said at the door, silence before was fear. Silence now is strategy. You're gathering ammunition. Patience is a weapon too. Frank walked back across the snow, let himself in through the workshop, crept into the house just as the first light hit the windows. Diane and Derek were already at the kitchen table. Coffee made, toast on plates. Derek looked up, eyes narrowing. Where you been, Pops? Out early. Took a walk, needed air, snow's pretty when it's fresh. Diane stood. Frank, I was worried. You weren't in the workshop. I'm fine, Frank said, met her eyes. Never better. He poured himself coffee from the pot, took a deliberate sip, watched them watch him. Derek and Diane exchanged a glance. Quick, worried. They knew something had changed. They just didn't know what. Janet Morrison's law office was above the hardware store on Main Street. Frank climbed the narrow stairs at 8:55 a.m., his knees protesting every step. The waiting room smelled like old coffee and paper. Janet herself was maybe 55, gray suit, kind eyes behind sharp glasses. She shook his hand firm, led him to an office that was organized chaos. Files stacked neat, certificates on the walls, a photo of 2 grown kids on the desk. Mr. Crowley, tell me everything. He did. She listened, taking notes in neat handwriting. When he finished, she sat back. Right now, this is circumstantial. Text could be argued as venting. Pills could be miscounted. She held up a hand before Frank could protest. I believe you, but we need pattern, intent, multiple witnesses. We need to build a case that's airtight. How? Document everything. Keep a separate account of daily events, and I'm filing for an emergency restraining order today in case things escalate. She leaned forward. Frank, you can legally record conversations in your own home, one-party consent state. If they say anything incriminating, record it. Exactly. An hour later, Frank was at Hannigan's bar. Ed Sullivan was wiping down the counter, getting ready for the lunch crowd. When he saw Frank, something shifted in his weathered face. Frank, Was wondering when you'd come. Margaret said, I know what she said, and she's right. Ed set down the rag. I should have come to you sooner. That Derek kid, he's got a mouth like a sewer when he's drunk. Ed gave a formal statement, Janet recording it on her phone. Derek bragging about his sugar mama Diane and the old man with deep pockets. Derek saying, just waiting for the old guy to croak, then we're set. Derek showing hotel receipts like trophies. Why didn't you tell me? Frank asked when they were done. Ed's face creased with guilt. Figured you knew, and we're handling it your way. Us vets, we don't stick our noses, but this inheritance thing, Frank, that changes it. He's planning something. You're helping now. That's what matters. Ed clasped his hand. Semper Fi, brother. The federal building was downtown, all marble and flags. Captain Hayes met Frank in a small office, everything organized with military precision. Mr. Crowley, Hayes gestured to a chair. I did some investigating after our meeting. Found something concerning. He pulled up records on his computer. Someone contacted our inheritance division on August 14th. Phone inquiry about Raymond Crowley's estate. Caller identified as Diane Crowley, niece-in-law. Frank's stomach dropped. When did my uncle die? September 1st. This call was 2 weeks before. The room tilted. She knew he was dying. She was checking on the money before. Yes, sir, and there's more. Hayes pulled up another file. Military hospital visitor logs. Diane Crowley visited your uncle twice. July 30th and August 10th. Posed as concerned family. Uncle Raymond was in hospice, still cognizant. What did she want? Security notes say she asked about arrangements and family affairs. He refused to discuss it, asked her to leave the second visit. Hayes pulled out a letter. Your uncle flagged it with his estate attorney. Wrote, nephew's wife visited asking about money. Don't trust her. Frank couldn't breathe. Diane had been hunting this money for months, before Frank even knew his uncle was sick. There's something else, Hayes said quietly. We found a forged power of attorney for you, filed 6 weeks ago. Medical decisions, gives Diane complete control if you are incapacitated. I never signed that. I compared signatures. It's forged. Hayes met his eyes. Mr. Crowley, your wife has been planning this for months. She tracked down your uncle, tried to manipulate him. When that failed, she targeted you. This is premeditated on every level. What do? I'm bringing in the FBI. Forged POA involving military inheritance is federal fraud. We move fast. We can prevent whatever they're planning. Frank left the federal building in a daze. Drove home on autopilot. That's when he saw the rental car in his driveway. Washington plates. Linda. His daughter stood on the porch, 40 years old, wearing a tech company fleece. He hadn't seen her in 3 years, not since that last tense Christmas. Dad? She looked worried. I called and you didn't answer. Thought I'd surprise you for the holidays. Then she saw Derek's truck, saw something in Frank's face. What's going on? They talked in the workshop. Frank told her everything, watched his daughter's face cycle through shock, rage, tears. She's having an affair? Linda's voice cracked. She's planning to kill you? Linda, and I wasn't here. I left you alone with her. She was crying now. All those years she criticized me. You said nothing. I thought you agreed with her, that I wasn't good enough. The truth hit Frank like a fist. I didn't know how to fight her. I thought staying quiet kept peace. I was wrong. We both let her control everything. Linda wiped her eyes. Let's change that. Together. She'd brought something. Pulled it from her purse. A small key. Grandpa gave me this before he died. I was 25, didn't understand. He said, if anything happens to your father, this matters. It's a safety deposit key. First National Bank. They went the next morning, Frank, Linda, and Janet. The box opened with a soft click. Inside, Uncle Raymond's handwritten letter. Frank's hands shook as he read aloud. Franklin, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Your wife came to see me twice asking about my will. I didn't trust her. The way she asked about money before asking how I felt. This is yours. Your service earned it. Your character deserves it. Don't let her take what your family bled for. I'm proud of you, nephew. Always was. Raymond. There were other documents. Raymond's notes on Diane's visits, dates, times, exact questions, and something that made Frank's blood run cold. A life insurance policy in his name, $500,000. Beneficiary, Derek Stallworth. She took out life insurance on you, Janet said quietly. Forged signature. This is insurance fraud, forgery, and evidence of intent. Linda grabbed Frank's hand. How could she? How could Mom? I don't know who she is anymore, Frank said. Maybe I never did. Over the next 2 days, the case came together like pieces of a puzzle Frank hadn't known he was solving. Hayes called. Phone records showed 847 calls between Derek and Diane in 6 months. Janet got hotel records, 15 stays at Pine Ridge Motel. Nora from church gave a statement. Margaret submitted her observation log. They met at Janet's office. Frank, Linda, Margaret, Janet, and Captain Hayes. We have enough, Janet said. Criminal charges, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, forgery, attempted poisoning. Civil charges, divorce, asset protection, restraining order. Hayes nodded. Federal charges ready. FBI coordinated with Sheriff Bradley. We execute tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Frank sat back, exhausted. Tomorrow. After tomorrow, it would be over. Frank, Sheriff Bradley called that night, we're executing warrants at 8 a.m. Can you be elsewhere? Rather you not be in the house when we arrest them. Frank thought about it. 42 years of marriage, ending in handcuffs. No, he said. I'm staying. I'm watching this. I need to see her face when she realizes it's over. Linda squeezed his hand. Then I'm staying too. Frank stood at Margaret's window at 7:45 a.m., dressed in his cleanest flannel, jeans pressed, purple heart pinned to his chest. Linda had asked about the medal. You're wearing it? Earned it. Time people saw it. 3 squad cars pulled up at exactly 8 o'clock. Sheriff Tom Bradley, Frank's classmate from 3rd grade, led the way, 2 deputies behind him, then an unmarked FBI vehicle with Captain Hayes, then Janet's silver Honda. I'm going over, Frank said. Dad, the sheriff said, she needs to see me, needs to know I'm not hiding. Margaret grabbed her coat. We're coming with you. They walked across the snow together, 3 generations of people who gave a damn. Frank's boots crunched loud in the morning quiet. Neighbors were starting to peek out windows. Small town. Word spread fast. Diane answered the door, in her bathrobe, coffee cup in hand. Her face went from confused to afraid in the space of a heartbeat. Frank, what's... Sheriff Bradley stepped forward. Police, ma'am. We need to come in. Derek appeared behind her wearing Frank's flannel again. What the hell is this? Frank didn't answer. Just walked past Diane into his own house, Linda and Margaret flanking him. The house smelled like coffee and toast. Normal, like any other morning. Except this morning was reckoning day. Living room, Sheriff Bradley said. Not a request. They sat, Diane and Derek on the couch, looking small suddenly. Sheriff Bradley stood by the door, Hayes and 2 FBI agents by the window. Janet opened her briefcase on the coffee table. Diane Crowley, Derek Stallworth, Bradley said. You're both under arrest. He read them their rights. Diane's face went white. Derek started to stand, and a deputy's hand on his shoulder put him back down. For what? Diane's voice was shrill. This is insane. Frank, tell them. Sit down, Diane, Frank said quietly. Both of you. Something in his voice, maybe the steadiness, maybe just that he'd finally stopped being silent, made them both obey. Janet pulled out a folder. Let me explain what you're being charged with, starting with the text messages. She read it aloud, every word. You'll die poor, you stupid old fool. Once he's gone, we'll have the house and the land. Just be patient, baby. I didn't mean... Diane's face crumbled. You meant every word, Frank said. Derek leaned forward. She was venting, man. It's not a crime to... Conspiracy to defraud, Janet interrupted. And we're just getting started. Hayes stepped forward with phone records. 847 calls between you two in 6 months, including this one, December 19th, 2:14 a.m. He pressed play on a recording, Diane's voice tinny through the speaker. Heart attack is cleanest. He's got medication. Nobody would question it. Man his age. The room went silent except for the recording. When it stopped, Diane was crying. You recorded me? In my own house, Frank said. Legal. Janet pulled out the next piece. Photo of the pill bottle. December 22nd, 2 beta blocker tablets missing. Coffee served to Mr. Crowley that morning, tested positive for crushed medication. Triple the normal dose. Sufficient to cause heart attack in a man his age. This is bullshit, Derek said. You can't prove... We have your fingerprints on the pill bottle, son, Sheriff Bradley said. Hayes presented the forged power of attorney. The life insurance policy with Derek as beneficiary, the signature analysis, each piece of evidence landing like a hammer, then the visitor logs, Diane at the hospice. The phone call to the Pentagon office 2 weeks before Raymond died. You knew about the inheritance before I did, Frank said. You visited my uncle on his deathbed, asking about his will. Frank, I was trying to help. By naming your lover as my life insurance beneficiary? Linda stood then, her 6-year-old son behind her. The boy had been with Margaret, but now he ran to Diane. Grandma, I didn't know you were here. Sweetie, Linda tried to grab him. Grandma brought me cookies, the boy said to Frank. She said don't tell you she visited. Was that the secret game? Everything stopped. Linda's face went pale. What? Grandma visited 3 times, asked about Mommy's important papers. Linda pulled a document from her bag, hands shaking. This signature, it's mine, but I didn't sign it. It's a codicil to Uncle Raymond's will, attempting to redirect assets to surviving spouse. She looked at her mother. You forged my signature. You used your own grandson. I was trying to protect our family. Diane was sobbing now. 42 years with him. Never enough money, never enough attention. I deserved better. I deserved to be happy. Frank stood, voice steady, calm. So you deserve to kill me? I wasn't going to. Derek was just, don't bring me into this. Derek was on his feet now. This was all her. She recruited me, said the old man was already dying. You said you loved me, Diane screamed. Lady, I love the money. You were just the vehicle. Sheriff Bradley pulled out handcuffs. That's enough. Diane was crying, makeup running, bathrobe clutched tight. Not the cold, efficient woman Frank had lived with for 42 years, just someone small and scared and caught. Frank, please, I'm sorry. It was a mistake. We can fix this. No, Frank said. We can't. You're not my wife. Haven't been for years. I'm done pretending. The handcuffs clicked. Diane on one wrist, then the other. Derek fought for a second before the deputy twisted his arm. Man, this isn't fair. Life isn't fair, son, Sheriff Bradley said. That's the lesson. They read the charges. Conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, fraud, forgery, insurance fraud. Each word another nail. Through the window, Frank saw neighbors watching. Nora from church, the hardware store owner. Ed Sullivan had walked over from the bar, small town. Everyone would know by noon. Diane looked back at Frank as they led her to the squad car. She was crying, mascara streaked, looking for something in his face. Mercy maybe, or regret. Frank looked back, felt nothing but tired. The cars pulled away, Derek in one, Diane in another, separated even in arrest. The house went quiet. Frank sat on his couch, Linda beside him, hand in his. Margaret brought a blanket. Mr. Crowley, Hayes said gently, we'll need formal statements. Tomorrow, Frank said. Today, I just need to breathe. After they all left, Frank sat alone in the living room. Sun streaming through the windows. Snow stopped, sky blue. He looked at the wedding photo on the mantel. Young faces, real smiles from a lifetime ago. Frank took it down, turned it face down. Then he sat back down. And for the first time in days, maybe years, he wept. Not from sadness, from release. The first night alone, Frank couldn't sleep in the bedroom. Too many ghosts. He made a nest in the workshop instead. Old blanket, space heater running, radio playing low. Slept 12 hours straight, woke to silence. No Diane moving around the kitchen, no coffee brewing that he was afraid to drink. Just quiet, honest quiet. Frank made his own coffee, sat at the kitchen table. The house felt bigger somehow, emptier, but cleaner too, like a wound finally scabbed over. Linda called, You okay, Dad? Getting there. I'm coming over. You don't have to. I'm coming over. Sunday, Frank went to church. First time in weeks. Walked in expecting whispers, got handshakes instead. Pastor Jim's sermon was about truth setting you free. Even when it hurts, Frank realized halfway through it was directed at him. Supportive, not judgmental. After service, people came up. Proud of you, Frank. Took courage. Should have spoken up sooner. Sorry. Nora apologized, tears in her eyes. I saw them together. Should have told you. You spoke up when it mattered, Frank said. That's enough. 3 weeks later, the courthouse. Frank sat between Linda and Janet while the judge read sentences. Diane, 8 years, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, forgery, attempted murder. Derek, 3 years. He'd testified against Diane for a reduction. The judge's words echoed. This court recognizes calculated long-term exploitation of an elderly veteran. Frank didn't feel satisfaction, just sadness for all the wasted years. Diane looked at him across the courtroom. No words, just eye contact. Frank saw a stranger wearing a familiar face. He looked away first. The inheritance cleared 2 weeks after that, $156 million, confirmed and legal. Frank sat with a financial advisor in an office that smelled like leather and old money. Made his decisions, $50 million to veteran PTSD treatment and suicide prevention, $20 million split between veteran housing programs, $10 million to Linda, help her buy a house, college fund for his grandson, $5 million to Margaret. She refused at first. Frank Crowley, I don't need your money. It's not about need, it's about worth. You saved my life. He pushed the papers across her table. Besides, keeps your nephew from circling like a vulture. She cried then. Never thought I'd see the day. Most people get money, they forget their friends. I don't forget who stood when I couldn't. Captain Hayes visited a month later. Off-duty, civilian clothes, brought an official commendation from the Pentagon. For your uncle's service and your own. They sat on Frank's porch, drinking coffee. Real coffee. No fear. My father died of PTSD-related issues, Hayes said quietly. He couldn't ask for help. Your donation to veteran mental health, that'll save lives. Thank you, sir. Thank your father's service. And yours. Linda stayed in town for 6 weeks, helped Frank sort through the house. Donated Diane's clothes, repainted the bedroom, organized the kitchen, making the house Frank's, not theirs. Late one night at the kitchen table, Linda said, "Why didn't you leave her years ago?" Didn't know I could, didn't know my worth. I'm sorry I stayed away. I'm sorry I didn't protect you from her cruelty. Frank reached across, covered her hand with his. Let's not apologize anymore. Let's just move forward. His grandson visited on weekends. The boy asked once, direct as kids are, "Why isn't Grandma here?" Linda kept it simple. Grandma made bad choices. She's away learning better ones. Is Grandpa sad? Frank knelt down to the boy's level. Sometimes, but I'm okay. I got you, don't I? He taught his grandson to whittle. Patient hands, small cuts of wood, a bird taking shape over days. See? Good things take time. The jewelry box, Diane's unfinished Christmas gift, stayed on the workshop shelf, monument to what he'd almost surrendered, reminder of what he'd survived. Frank started a new project, toy chest for his grandson, something that would last. He became a regular at Hannigan's bar. Lunch only, never dinner. Ed always said, "Huh?" On the house, Frank. The veterans' table adopted him. Stories, laughter, brotherhood. A place where he was seen, valued, no longer isolated. Margaret came over most mornings, coffee on his porch or in her kitchen. Comfortable silence or easy talk. She tried to teach him to bake. Disaster. They laughed until their sides hurt. He fixed her broken fence. She brought him casseroles. Friendship without debt, just presence. The town changed how they looked at him. Not poor Frank anymore. Frank who stood up. Frank who survived. He got invitations, dinners, church events. Accepted some, declined others. Learning to be social again. Learning it was okay to be selective. Valentine's Day came. First one alone in 43 years. No card to buy, no flowers to arrange. Margaret brought cookies. Ignore the Hallmark nonsense. They watched old westerns instead. Frank realized love looked different than he'd thought. Not grand gestures, just showing up. Spring came slow. Snow melted into mud season. Frank ordered garden seeds, tomatoes, beans, flowers. Haven't had time for a garden in years. Ambitious, Margaret said. Got time now. Got reasons to see summer. One morning in early April, Frank sat on his new porch, he'd rebuilt it himself, watching the sun come up, coffee in his grandfather's old mug. The screen door didn't creak anymore. He'd oiled it. Small fix, but it mattered. His phone buzzed. Linda. Dad, I'm thinking of moving back. My son needs his grandpa. Frank smiled, typed back. I'd like that a lot. For the first time in years, Frank looked forward to tomorrow. 6 months later, and Frank's house looked different. Fresh white paint on the clapboard, new porch he'd built himself, solid cedar that would outlast him, garden out back, tomatoes climbing their cages, beans starting to flower, zinnias bright as birthday candles. Frank woke to birdsong instead of alarm, bedroom window open, curtains moving in the June breeze, made coffee without checking it. That fear was gone now, mostly. Some mornings it still crept back, but less and less. He sat on his new porch rocker, mug warm in his hands. The wood didn't creak. He'd built it right. Across the yard, Margaret's kitchen light was on. Always was. Two survivors choosing mornings over darkness. Linda's car pulled up at 9. His grandson, 7 now, jumped out before she'd even parked, running across the grass. "Grandpa, I finished the bird." He held up a carved wooden sparrow, rough but earnest, wings a little uneven, but honest work. Week-long project. Frank took it, turned it over in his hands. "Look at that. You're a natural. Can we make a hawk next?" "Hawks are tricky, but yeah, we can try." Linda came up the steps carrying a covered dish. "Made pancakes at home. Thought we could eat here." They set up in Frank's kitchen, the three of them plus Margaret, who'd wandered over with fresh strawberries. Normal family noise, grandson chattering about summer camp, Linda laughing, syrup spilled, paper towels, the kind of chaos Frank had missed without knowing it. "Put an offer on that house 3 blocks over," Linda said, pouring coffee. "Closes next month." Frank's throat got tight. 3 blocks. "Yeah, too close?" "Not close enough, but it'll do." After breakfast, they all went to church, the 4 of them together, Frank, Linda, his grandson, Margaret. Pew that used to feel lonely now felt full. Pastor Jim's sermon was about rebuilding. Frank felt every word personally. After service, community lunch in the basement. Frank didn't sit alone anymore. Ed was there, and the veterans table, and neighbors who'd stopped whispering and started talking. Afternoon on the porch, Frank teaching his grandson to whittle a hawk. Slow work, patient work. "Grandpa, you ever scared?" Frank paused, knife mid-cut. Honest question deserved honest answer. "Every day, son." The boy looked up, surprised. "But being scared don't mean you stay down. Means you know something matters enough to fight for." "Like Mom says, courage is being scared but doing it anyway?" "Exactly that." Margaret brought lemonade, her sugar cookies that were always too sweet and perfect. Ed stopped by to check the deck railing Frank had built. "Solid work, better than those contractor types." Evening came gentle. Linda mentioned casually, "Got a letter from Mom." Frank looked up from his coffee. "She wants to talk. Says she's sorry." "What do you want to do?" Linda twisted her cup. "Part of me wants to forgive. Part of me can't. On both can be true. You don't have to decide today." Frank set his cup down. "I'm not seeing her, but you do what you need. I won't make you choose sides." "Thanks, Dad." After Linda left, Frank sat alone on the porch, thought about Diane. He did that sometimes still, though not often. No anger left, just sadness for the waste. 42 years, some good memories existed, he wouldn't lie about that, but they didn't outweigh survival. He didn't hate her. He just didn't think about her much. That was its own kind of freedom. Mail came late. Packet from the VA hospital. New PTSD wing opening, funded by the Crowley Veterans Mental Health Fund. Inside, thank you letters. Frank read each one slow. One stuck with him. "Your donation saved my life. I was planning to end it. Now I'm getting help. Thank you." Frank wiped his eyes. Uncle Raymond's money doing good. Better than sitting in some bank account. Margaret came over at 7, like she did most nights. They watched Jeopardy, argued about answers. Comfortable silence between rounds. No romance, never would be. Just companionship. 2 people who'd survived and chosen to keep living. "Never thought I'd say this," Margaret said during commercial, "but I'm glad for what happened." Glad for pain? Glad for who you became because of it. New neighbors moved in across the street last month. Young couple, baby on the way. The husband waved from his porch. "Mr. Crowley, thanks for that garden advice. Call me Frank, and happy to help any time." New life in the neighborhood, not just his, everyone's. Cycles continuing. Night came soft. Frank in his bedroom, could sleep there now without ghosts, no fear checking locks, no paranoia about pills or coffee, just tired from a good day. Tomorrow, Linda visiting again. Garden needed weeding. Promised to help Ed fix his mower. Small things. Real things. Frank closed his eyes. Thought about the question people kept asking, did you forgive her? He didn't answer them out loud. But lying there in the dark, he knew his truth. He didn't think about her much anymore. Opposite of love wasn't hate, it was indifference. And building something new with people who saw him, that was enough. He had a grandson learning to whittle, a daughter moving 3 blocks away, a neighbor who checked on him, a friend who fixed things beside him. Purpose in every thank you letter, peace in morning coffee without fear. That wasn't just enough. That was everything. Frank slept, dreamless, deep, the kind of sleep that comes when you've fought your way through hell and found yourself still standing on the other side. Morning would come, and he'd face it, with people who mattered, with the voice he'd reclaimed, with the dignity he'd fought for. Silence wasn't surrender, never had been, it was just gathering strength. And now he was strong enough to be gentle, strong enough to love carefully, strong enough to live fully. That was the real inheritance. Frank woke to another dawn. Third week of June, air coming through the window, carrying the smell of cut grass and his own tomato plants. He made coffee in his grandfather's old mug, walked out to the porch. The garden was coming in strong, life insisting on itself like it always did. Tomatoes heavy on the vine, beans climbing toward the sun, flowers his grandson had helped plant turning their faces to the light. Margaret's kitchen light was on across the yard. She'd be over soon with something, casserole or cookies or just company. Linda's new house 3 blocks down had lights on too, getting the boy ready for day camp probably. Ed's truck would pass by 9, heading to open the bar. Frank had people now, real people, the kind who noticed if he didn't show up. He thought about the jewelry box still sitting in his workshop, unfinished. He'd never thrown it away, never completed it either, just left it there as proof he'd stopped giving to someone who couldn't receive. That wasn't failure, that was wisdom. His grandson would be by later for their whittling lesson. Frank would teach him what he wished he'd learned sooner. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Your voice matters. Use it before silence becomes a trap. Being scared is human. Staying trapped is a choice. Breaking the cycle. The boy wouldn't learn passivity. He'd learn discernment. People asked Frank sometimes, "Are you happy now?" Happy was too simple for what this was. He was alive. He was seen. He was safe. Had people who cared if he woke up tomorrow. Had purpose beyond just surviving another day. Turned out that wasn't just enough. That was everything he'd needed all along. Frank stood, stretched in the morning sun, hands scarred but steady, face lined but peaceful. Walked over to Margaret's for breakfast, screen door closing gentle behind him. The rocking chair kept moving slightly on the porch, coffee mug half full on the rail, garden visible beyond, growing while he wasn't watching, life continuing, simple, real, earned. Frank had almost given up, almost let silence be his surrender. He was glad he didn't. Glad he was here. Glad for tomorrow, whatever it brought, long as he brought himself, whole self, voice, and all. That was the inheritance that mattered. Not the money, not the house, not even the justice. Just this, knowing his worth, finally, at 68 years old. Better late than never.